the case of jailed publisher Jimmy Lai in Hong Kong. You've been remarkably silent on this issue. Why have we not heard anything from you?
Mark Carney is going to China. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today, what we're seeing is Mark Carney not getting a deal with Donald Trump, and all of that emotion tied up in the Trump tariffs is now guiding the Liberals towards more trade with China. Is this a good idea? Even though China has done nothing to prove themselves as a more trustworthy trading partner. In fact, the opposite. Currently, Anita Nand is over in China right now. Mark Carney is going to meet with China. We've got this PEI probe that has come out showing China is trying to take over Prince Edward Island, and yet many Liberal voters are still in favor of having closer ties with China. Let's jump into this. Starting this one off, we're going back to Mark Carney's press conference. He had a couple questions about China that I specifically didn't put in the last video to put them all together here. Carney getting asked about Chinese tariffs, EVs, and all this. I bet he absolutely hates these questions.
China's ambassador to Canada has said that if you lift the EV tariffs, China will lift its canola oil tariffs. Will you, or canola tariffs, will you, yes or no? And China is clearly exploiting the canola sector's reliance on its export market. Wouldn't it be naive to expand the trade relationship with that country given that?
Well, there's a lot packed into that question, but let me take the last bit and build out from it, which is that we get a lesson from the trade actions of the United States over the last this year, trade actions such as the canola tariffs that you just referenced, the danger of overdependence on single trade partners. In those contexts, we have to look for alignment of incentives and interests as much as possible. That's where it's possible and responsible and fair to workers and fair to our future to have deeper relationships. And that's part of what we're doing with the United States, is Canada determining where can we trust the United States through ups and downs, and in what areas can we do that, and where should we have that exposure?
It's amazing that he's somehow turning a question about China tariffing Canada into America not being trustworthy. What a guy.
Similar process with China. We are restarting broad engagement with China. I'll make a point. I met the Prime Minister, the Premier of China, a few weeks ago. That was the first meeting between the head of the Canadian government and a senior, either the Premier or the President, in 7 years of China. This is our second largest trading partner. And so when you have that, and there's reasons for that, but when you have that situation, you end up with these dependencies and these exposures. So to get back to the first part of your question, we have a broader trading relationship with China. There are different levers that we have, or opportunities that we have for China in Canada. We are in the process of having those discussions on a much broader range of issues than single sectors and single trades. And when we look at the auto sector, we take into account the dynamics with the United States, the ongoing negotiations there, and what the potential impact is. So last point. I met the Prime Minister, the Chinese Prime Minister, a few weeks ago. Our Foreign Minister, Minister Anand, is arriving in Beijing basically as we speak, and I expect to meet the senior Chinese leadership in the coming month or so, and we'll continue those discussions, and we'll see where the trade relationship evolves. Thank you.
Next. This guy talks about exposure. He has rampant conflicts of interest. He went and met Xi Jinping as a U.S. business leader last year, and Brookfield has invested hundreds of millions of dollars with China. President Xi Jinping meets representatives of U.S. business, strategic, and academic communities. He's right there. Mark Carney is right there. Xi Jinping. Mark Carney is right there. Xi Jinping. You talk about exposure. A review of corporate documents reveals that Brookfield, the influential $900 billion investment fund from which Liberal Prime Minister to be Mark Carney stepped away from in order to replace Justin Trudeau as Canada's leader, maintains $3 billion in politically sensitive investments with Chinese state-linked real estate and energy companies, along with substantial offshore banking presence. One of its major real estate ventures, a $750 million entry into a high-end Shanghai commercial property in 2013, involved a Hong Kong tycoon tycoon affiliated with the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, which CIA labeled a Central United Front entity of Beijing. Once again, Mark Carney right there with Xi Jinping. Yeah, there's exposure going on here. Canada's got some exposure. Mark Carney's connections with China are undeniable, and we're seeing the rise of China throughout the past many decades here. Got this clip here from CBC where a former Trump advisor is talking to David Cochrane about China's rise. This picks up, they're talking about NAFTA, and initially when that came in, and then China eventually comes in and now is trying to take over a bunch of industries. They're doing it with critical minerals. They're trying to do it with EVs.
It started because of a continental free trade agreement, started by Brian Mulroney and Ronald Reagan and then renegotiated by Donald Trump himself. I mean, why is this suddenly now a threat to the national security of the United States of America?
David, it's such a great question. I think it's important to put it in a broader historical context. And you're absolutely right. I mean, the U.S. Canada relationship was really the beginning of the free trade era. And it was one of the first agreements that the U.S. and the United States entered into for trade liberalization on a bilateral basis. There's a lot of criticism about that, about concerns over undermining the global trading system, the WTO, et cetera. What has transpired since then, obviously, is the rise of China. And so it's one thing to have liberalized trade in an environment where there's, a few competitors. It's another where over the past couple of decades, you've had a heavily subsidized competitor really push the boundaries of market expansion and really put stress on the international trading system. So I don't think it's a Canada-U.S. issue only. It's certainly manifested in this relationship, but it is a broader global issue that I think the United States is grappling with.
Right, but
so most of this interview, David Cochrane just keeps drilling down on Donald Trump and the relationship breaking apart with Canada and all that. And so he brings it over to China, and you're going to see David Cochrane is trying to pull it away from China because the liberals don't want this in the news. They don't want to be talking about China at all. It's got to be Donald Trump, orange man bad, boogeyman over and over, because the government may fall come November 4th when Mark Carney's budget is tabled and nobody supports them. The government will fall. And when we're seeing stuff like this, once again, from Sam Cooper's The Bureau, breaking PEI urges RCMP probed of alleged foreign interference and money laundering. That's right, to the RCMP commissioner, the same one who just took a question at Mark Carney's press conference there. I'm writing to you on behalf of many islanders who have expressed deep concern regarding serious allegations of foreign interference, money laundering in Prince Edward Island. These allegations primarily center around the activities of certain Buddhist groups and their affiliates operating in the province and build on years of public speculation and uncertainty. So what's going on here? China essentially slowly taking over Prince Edward Island and doing it through these Buddhist groups. The government moves comes a week after the Bureau reported on findings presented at an October 8 news conference tied to the book Canada Under Siege, How PEI Became a Forward Operating Base for the Chinese Communist Party. It goes on to say Canada has entered a new era of contention over influence, sovereignty, and the integrity of its democratic institutions. In related coverage by CBC, representatives of the religious groups have denied any links to the Chinese Communist Party or any improper dealings. Of course they have. Goes on to say here the anticipated 2016 to 2018 Island Regulatory and Appeals Commission investigation into the Buddhist links land holdings was never completed. So there was an investigation. It was never completed. Why was it not completed? It says Section 15 probe has ended without any public findings or any explanation of who ordered the closure or why. Pretty scathing stuff here. China essentially trying to take over Prince Edward Island as forward operating base. Is this a country we should have closer ties with?
I appreciate China is a non-market economy and operates in ways that are not consistent with sort of the more liberal trade principles of Western countries. But, Canada has aligned itself with the United States on things like electric vehicle tariffs, aligned itself with the United States on to stop dumping of things like steel and other goods, doing the transshipment workaround that China and other countries have done, and yet the country is still being punished. So I mean, what is the way out of this for Canada with this president? Because Canadians do not believe they're a bad actor when it comes to the United States, and here we are losing tens of thousands of jobs.
I understand that, and I think it's hard to separate the psychology of the tariffs from. I don't know that this is intended to be punitive per se, and I think one of the difficult things to appreciate is that this is not just Canada, that there are many, many other countries that are subject to tariffs as well. Now, it's true we've had a very special relationship, so it may feel more targeted and more directed at Canada. But I think the president's really trying to rebalance global trading relationships. And so Canada is definitely caught up in that. I do think sectorals are a good way to continue engagement and very important to remain at the table. We've seen just in the past 9 months movement from imposition of a tariff to a standstill type arrangement, and even framework agreements that lead to a continued negotiation. Obviously, we're headed into a very important discussion with Canada on the terms of the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement, which is CUSMA for Canada.
Mm-hmm. The CUSMA negotiations will make or break Canada, basically. But he mentioned their sectoral tariffs. Mark Carney mentioned in his press conference yesterday, energy, steel, and aluminum. And then he said we're also going to be talking about the other sectors. He's not putting those other ones on this top priority. It's steel, aluminum, and energy. Energy is probably because Donald Trump said, hey, let's look at this Keystone thing again. It's an easy win for him, and it's an easy win for Mark Carney. And if that's what's going to get things moving, it's hard to know what's exactly going on here. Because Carney, clearly, he's had months to get a deal, and he's not getting it. We have enough leverage here in Canada to get a deal, but he's not getting it. Are we going to see CUSMA get ripped up? Are we going to see, what is going on here? Is Carney working for the other team? And then you'd ask, which team? Is it America or China? I mean, he was endorsed by Xi Jinping, essentially, and the CCP during our election. It's wild, the data we're seeing coming out of Angus Reid here. So what we have is a favorability chart based on country and throughout time here. So what we have is the month and the year. So going all the way back to October 2018, Canada's favorability with UK 82%, Japan 79%, South Korea 61%, Mexico 58%. You see, but United States was 49%, India 44%, and China 38%. So we go to May of 2024 last year, we've got China's down to 13%. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in the news, a lot of nefarious things, cracking down on freedom of speech, democracy, all that. Meanwhile, America went up to 55%. Now let's fast forward to the beginning of the year, 40% for America. That's after Donald Trump started the 51st state talk. China's still down to 16%. But you notice it went up a few percentage points. Then we go to March, just before Mark Carney got elected, 24% for America. They're dropping off a cliff here because 51st state talk. China continues to rise, 20%. Then you're seeing 32% for America, so it's gone up a little bit since. But China has gone up to 27% now. So what's happening is Canadians, leftist liberals most likely, are viewing Americans as the enemy and China more as an ally, which is ridiculous. Even got it right here. It says, consider that Canadians are more likely to say that United States 46% should be treated as a threat than China at 34%. Caution is more appropriate according to Canadians in this relationship with China, 37%, while only 1/4 of Canada should approach the Chinese as a friend or ally. 23% of Canadians think China should be approached as a friend or an ally. That is how clueless some Canadians are. So we got this chart here saying agree, disagree. We need to focus on our economic relationship with China. So back in February, 50% of people said no, 36% said yes, but now it's only 32% saying no and 51% saying yes. I mean, this makes sense with Donald Trump 51st state talk. We need more partners. China is absolutely massive. That's why you're seeing that. But unfortunately, people are mixing trusting China with doing more business with China. It's a different thing. You can do business and still not trust them. Meanwhile, Canadians are asked about each of these countries and how much they think they know about them. Canadians who respond to this saying that 88% of them think they know a lot about America, 63% UK, Mexico 50%, and China only 45%. People are rendering opinions on countries they don't even hardly know anything about. So over half of these people, 55%, don't know much about China, but think we should be doing more business with them, or in 23% of people's case, think we should regard them as a friend or ally. And they've got one down here overall. Would you say we have a favorable, unfavorable view of these countries? So first, Japan is at the top, 82%. Only 5% of people have an unfavorable view of Japan, which is funny. But at the bottom, what do we have? United States, 63% negative, 32% positive. 54% negative for India, 29% positive. And China is 59% negative, 27% positive. It's wild what some tariffs will do. And this one here is wild too. So this is a breakdown of viewing each country. Do we see them as an enemy, red, cautiously, or friend, an ally? And once again, looking at the bottom, 46% of Canadians view the United States as an enemy. Cautious 24%, 27% as an ally. Meanwhile, China is only 34% the enemy. And there's that 23% we were talking about earlier, viewing China as a friend or ally. This is crazy. Canadians have been drinking the Kool-Aid. Have we forgotten about Paul Chang already?
Paul Chang, a Liberal MP running for re-election in the Toronto area riding of Markham-Unionville, told a Chinese language newspaper, quote, "To everyone here, you can claim the $1 million Hong Kong bounty if you bring Conservative candidate Joe Tay to Toronto's Chinese consulate." Tay, who was born in Hong Kong before immigrating to Canada, is a pro-democracy activist and has a bounty on him by Hong Kong police. Chang now says he does not want to be a distraction and is standing aside.
This is disgraceful. He enticed people to bring a conservative candidate to a Chinese consulate to be shipped over to China and likely executed, and this is who liberals think we should be closer with. Are you kidding me? We're going to do business with China. We do it at arm's length. We shouldn't be getting all cushy with China.
On the same day, Liberal leader Mark Carney voiced support for the candidate.
This is a person of integrity who served this community, his community, as a senior police officer for, as I said, more than a quarter century.
This guy's a senior police officer. He knew better. Mark Carney doing damage control here, supporting this guy.
He's made a terrible lapse in judgment. He's made an apology for that. It's also an individual who has family in Hong Kong. He's under no illusions about the situation there, the situation in broader China. He's made those apologies. He's made them directly to the individual concerned.
This is what weak leadership looks like. Jumping back to Mark Carney's press conference from yesterday, Laura Stone from the Globe and Mail asks him a question about China. He wasn't expecting this. He didn't like this question. Check out his body language.
Minister, Laura Stone, Globe and Mail. I want to ask about the case of jailed publisher Jimmy Lai in Hong Kong. You've been remarkably silent on this issue. We've heard from Keir Starmer calling for his release, President Trump calling for his release.
So Jimmy Lai has been in jail 1,752 days. Jimmy Lai is a pro-democracy campaigner in Hong Kong who founded Apple Daily, a newspaper advocating freedom of speech. His staunch criticism of the Chinese government and support for democratic movements led to his arrest in 2020 under the national security law. This is quite the scathing situation here where Xi Jinping has cracked down on freedom of speech. You got Mark Carney being asked about this. Look how he responds here. Does this look like a pro-freedom kind of guy, or does this look like someone who's in bed with Xi Jinping?
Why have we not heard anything from you? And will you be granting him honorary Canadian citizenship or even following through with his application for full Canadian citizenship?
Look, we support the freedom of the press, and we would urge the release of Mr. Lai. With respect to citizenship, we have processes to become Canadian citizenship. I'm making the point on humanitarian grounds and our support for, as I say, support for freedom of the press, including in Hong Kong. We first and foremost take responsibility for the citizens of Canada and the residents of Canada.
Wow. How many ums was that? What's funny is I tried to look at the YouTube transcript here to see how many ums he said, and YouTube automatically removes it. I went through and counted them. There was 12 ums. What was like a 20-second response? 12 ums. Looks like Mark Carney doesn't want to rock the boat with Brookfield's business partner, his business partner. He was there in 2024 with Xi Jinping. He wouldn't want to make business more difficult for Bruce Flatt, Brookfield. This whole situation here. When Mark Carney called the election, then Bruce Flatt went March 23rd, 2025 to go meet with Premier He Lifeng, one of Xi Jinping's top members of his government. That's why he's so nervous to answer this question. For him, it's dollars and cents. And finally, we have this. Would you say China is a good trading partner in blue or a bad trading partner, a country we should trade less with? This is back from November 2021, so a few years ago. And now this is switched to where it's almost 50-50. And while I get Canadians are mad about the American tariffs, but we have to remember, China has tariffs on us too. Carney's not even trying to get a deal there at all. This all comes down to the media. The seafood and the canola industry are getting hammered by China. It's just not publicized in the media at all.